हेलो।
हाँ जी मैम, मैम यू आर ऑडिबल, मैम यू आर ऑडिबल।
हाँ जी मैम। तो
हाँ,
मैम ये मैं बताना चाहती हूँ कि ये कविता मैं लिखती हूँ, मुझे लिखने का शौक है और ये मेरी खुद की लिखी हुई कविता है। तो बस जो आपके सामने रखनी थी मुझे, उम्मीद है आपको पसंद आई होगी।
वेरी नाइस, बहुत बढ़िया
थैंक यू
कविता।
नाज मैम।
Very good. Very good.
थैंक यू मैम।
Excellent.
थैंक यू सर, थैंक यू
ये
वेरी मच।
कविता बिल्कुल हमारे पैनल डिस्कशन से इट्स जस्ट पैनल डिस्कशन का कह सकते हैं, बेस इसको कह सकते हैं, because we are talking about feminism and the feminist,
जी
yes,
मैम।
feminist perspective. So
जी।
this is how, so the start of the day is absolutely fine with us. So thank you, Dr. Naz Parveen. बहुत बढ़िया।
थैंक यू मैम, थैंक यू वेरी मच।
Ma'am, shall we start? Rekha ma'am, shall we start?
Please, हाँ, please.
Okay, okay. As we know that, and we are gathered here for the second day of international seminar, and the topic is we are going to discuss, that is on feminism. Yesterday we have discussed with topic related to Buddhism, but today in this session to discuss feminism. It is kind of movement that required only equality to man. What I observed and we have seen earlier. Then I welcome all the panelists, and we have our panel chairman today with us, Professor Anirudh Deshpande. Sir, I welcome you wholeheartedly. Professor Anirudh Deshpande.
Thank you very much.
Sir,
Thank you.
He is a professor of modern history in Delhi, University of Delhi. He has been Teen Murti Fellow
Please,
from
I'd like to intervene here. I would like to put in a word about this. I think you can skip the introduction because anybody who wants to check things out can check me out on Google Scholar and the Delhi University History Department website. So please dispense with the formalities. Thank you very much.
Sir, actually, you are saying right, sir. But in few words, we want to introduce. It's our pleasure, sir. It's
No,
our pleasure.
you can just say that I am a professor of history at the University of Delhi History Department.
Eminent scholar, and
Well,
we are obliged you, sir. We are obliged to have you here, and thank you so much, sir, for coming here. And sir has visit many universities and a large number of books he has in his accounts, like British Raj and its armed force, British military policy in
I
India.
don't mind, but please skip the details.
Okay,
Please,
sir. Okay, sir. Okay.
It doesn't really,
Okay, thank you so much.
matter. All these things don't really matter.
Thank you for your kind wishes, sir. Thank you so much. Sir, kindly enlighten us on the topic, sir.
Participants are requested to please mute yourself.
Dear participants,
चेतना आर्या, please mute yourself.
dear participants, please keep your mic on mute.
See, everybody is speaking at the same time, so
Yes.
and there are all kinds of
Dr. Meghna
conversations.
Sharma ji is
मैं आर्य साहब से गुजारिश करता हूँ वो
9:30 बजे पत्थर होते थे फरागन 9 बजे।
dear participants, please mute your mic.
मेडिकल में
देखिए
लेना पड़ा, दवाई दे रहे थे। हाँ, पहले वो ऑपरेशन का कह रहे थे ना।
Dr. Oja,
by
can
name,
you just
madam.
ask people to
Call by name.
चेतना आर्या, Dr. Chetna Arya, please. Yes, it is done.
सैटरडे का देख लीजिएगा ना, सैटरडे के लिए रात में।
Ma'am, I'm unable to see the whose mic is on. Please.
It is Dr. Chetna Arya's mic is on. Okay.
अभी हो गया ये राजा एक चीज खाना दे।
Dr. Sarita, please go ahead.
G. They kindly enlighten with your words. Anirudh sir.
I cannot speak like this because everybody is talking at the same time. I can hear all kinds of voices in my ear. I mean, how?
Yeah, I can understand, sir.
You can understand all kinds of conversations are coming into the picture. I mean, I can hear all sorts of conversations about pictures and all sorts
So
of
give
things.
me a couple of minutes, please.
Please call
give me a
Dr.
couple of
Chetna
minutes.
and she
I
could
don't
be
know,
said.
मैडम
I'll be having her phone number. Somebody can call and tell
आपका
her
नाम आ रहा हो ना कहीं
mute
नहीं आ
her
रहा है,
mic.
कल से भी ढूंढ रही थी मैं। कल से नहीं आ रहा होगा, यू करके सबसे ऊपर ही आ रहा होगा। सबसे पहले अपने स्क्रीन तो आता है।
Ma'am, we can remove this ma'am. I don't know who is she, but we can remove.
ये तो ये वो प्रेजेंट रुको यही म्यूट। ओहो
You see, if they are not interested in the seminar, then they shouldn't be participating.
अभी आया है ना।
See, she's going on and on. She's not stopping at all.
Give me some time, please.
Okay, sir. You will start.
मेरे ख्याल से अब I think we can start now.
Okay, sir.
Please, sir, please.
Thank you.
So, Dr. MC Arya requested me to deliver a little, it's a kind of keynote address or a sort of introductory lecture on the philosophy and praxis of Gautam Buddha. So, I would like to at the outset tell everybody that I am not an expert on Buddhism, and my knowledge of Buddhism is rather limited compared to many who are great experts on Buddhism and various kinds of Buddhism and so on and so forth. And what I have learned about Buddhism is it comes to me primarily from Rahul Walpole's excellent biography of Buddha, which is called What the Buddha Taught. And then, of course, Iqbal Singh's much published, many times reprinted, excellent biography, political, cultural, economic, and historical biography of Buddha, a book called Gautam Buddha. And of course, since I'm an avid fan and reader of the works of Baba Saheb Ambedkar, his one text which is available in volume 11 of the collected works of Ambedkar is called The Buddha and His Dhamma. These are the texts which I have read carefully. And on the basis of these texts, I'm going to speak a little about what Buddhism is, who was Buddha, and what does Buddhism stand for, and why is Buddhism and Buddha, why are they important to the universities in which we teach today? So, I mean, there are one could go on and on about various anecdotes from the life of Buddha, which are recounted by Iqbal Singh and also Rahul Walpole in their works on the lives and times of Gautam Buddha in the 6th century BC. One can also refer to various books on ancient Indian history in which the work, I mean, heterodox sects like Buddhism and Jainism and the Ajivikas and so on and so forth are put in their context, historical context, the context informed by the crystallization of the caste system, the emergence of Brahmanism, the emergence of caste hierarchies, untouchability, and the emergence of the political system, which we know as the Matsya Nyaya, which was prevalent during the times of the Shodash Mahajanapada. So one can go on and on. As a historian, one can talk about these things, but this is not something which I'm going to talk about right now. I'm going to focus attention on what can we understand by Buddhism? What can we understand by Buddha and his Dhamma? What does he mean by Dhamma? Is it a kind of revealed religion which which plays an important role in the unfolding of religions like, let's say, Christianity or Islam, or what we call, quote unquote, the Vedic Hinduism or Varnashram Dharma sort of Hinduism, or is it something completely different? I would also like to begin, I would like to throw a little light on the beginnings of Buddha's Parivraj. I'm sure you people know the meaning of Parivraj. Parivraj basically means, becoming a Parivrajaka, or taking the vow of Parivraj means you become a roving, traveling mendicant who doesn't have any attachments, who doesn't have any possessions. It's almost like becoming a bhikkhu. It's almost like becoming a bhikshu. In Pali, in Prakrit, it becomes bhikkhu. So why did he take Parivraj? That's the first important task in understanding Buddhism, and I think it's very extremely important from the point of view of the times we find ourselves living in, because these are times where you have a contest of ideologies everywhere going on, and these are times when people are talking about dissent being in danger, democracy being in danger, and various sorts of totalitarianisms threatening our lives, and so on and so forth. So why does he take
easy में डालें, easy है?
Dr.
Uh,
Dr. Rani, can you
yes,
just
sir. Remove them, na, sir.
please remove? We can still hear the voices. See.
Yes, sir. But
I
I have requested to them. Yes.
I mean, it's all right, but I mean, we are not going to listen to these things in a seminar. Please understand that.
Sure, ma'am. Sure. Sir, I'll find out now what is going on.
नहीं, क्योंकि बीच बीच में वो आवाजें आ जाती हैं, फिर वो ना अजीब सा एक पूरा जो फ्लो होता है जब आदमी
जी sir. Dear participants, please, it's our earnest request. Please keep your mic on mute, because there is some disturbance. If you don't want to listen, you can remove yourself. But please don't disturb.
नहीं, अगर किसी को दिलचस्पी नहीं है तो छोड़ दे सेमिनार को, कोई जरूरी नहीं है। डॉक्टर ने नहीं कहा कि सेमिनार आपको करना ही है, मतलब जिसको नहीं करना है, जो शरीक नहीं होना चाहता वो छोड़ दे सेमिनार को, और अगर वो रहना चाहता है और फिर भी कुछ और
ये डॉक्टर जी
अपने माइक को और अपने, खैर वीडियो तो नहीं है किसी का भी ऑन, सिर्फ आप ही का है, लेकिन माइक को बंद करें भाई अपने।
Dr. Tenjan, I request to you, sir, please keep your mic mute. And
okay.
Please, sir, please.
Yeah.
So let's begin with how this is an explanation given by Baba Sahib Ambedkar in his very important book, which is called The Buddha and His Dhamma, which is available in volume 11 of his collected works. I have all the collected works, and I keep reading these things. Why does he take parivraj? What is the main reason? See, we've been told right from our childhood that he saw these, you have Siddhartha as a princeling or as a noble person, as a noble Arya who goes and he witnesses a dead body and an ill person and an old person and so on and so forth. And then he is animated by the desire to look for the cause of sadness, dukkha in this world. And so he actually becomes a renunciator. He becomes a parivrajak, right? And then he goes and he renounces and he does penance and so on and so forth. And after a very long time, he comes to enlightenment under the Bodhi tree in Bodh Gaya. And then he preaches his first sermon at Sarnath. And from there you have, the Sangha, the Buddhist Sangha, starting this, the origins of the Buddhist Sangha then begin from there. These are all stories which what all school textbooks will tell students and so on and so forth. But Ambedkar actually gives us a very, very interesting interpretation of why the Buddha went away from Lumbini and Kapilavastu and so on. And why did he leave his tribe, the Shakya tribe? Sometimes he's also referred to as the Shakya Muni. Why did he leave the Shakya tribe, his own tribe, and went ahead and he decided to take Parivraj? Now, at the heart of this explanation is Buddha's respect for dissent and democracy. Because one of the reasons which Ambedkar points out, he underlines, is that there was a water dispute going on between the Shakyas and the Kolyas, and they were, as is the case, agricultural communities fight over water rights, irrigation rights, and so on and so forth. So there was a very long-standing water dispute going on, and to teach the Kolyas a lesson, the Shakya council decided to go to war against the Kolyas. And when a tribe decided to go to war against another tribe, then it was expected, the tribal council expected everybody in the tribe, at least all the able-bodied men in the tribe, to be part of the army which will go to war against the other tribe. Now, since Siddhartha Gautam, he was not convinced of the argument made by the Shakya elders regarding the cause of this conflict, he decided to dissent. He said, you people are, basically, just to paraphrase what Ambedkar says, he very clearly says that you people want to go to war against the Kolyas. You think you are very self-righteous. You think you have not done you've not made mistakes, that you are absolutely correct and the Kolyas are absolutely wrong. And you want me to be part of an enterprise which is basically designed to wage war against the Kolyas and kill them. And I don't think you are taking the right position. I don't think you are correct. And I would like to dissent from this. I don't want to be part of this war. I don't want to be part of this violence against your neighbors. And the solution to this problem lies in a very amicable sharing of waters, because basically what he's trying to say is that the water belongs to everybody. It doesn't belong to one particular community or tribe. So it would be best in the interest of everybody concerned, especially both the warring parties, that the water is amicably shared and you come to an agreement with them and you resolve this whole thing peacefully and don't go to war. After which the Shakya council then gives him an option. They say either it's a very clear black and white case for them. They say either you join us in our warlike activities against the Kolyas, or you decide you can go into exile. And that is the main reason why Buddha, that is the main reason why Gautam, Siddhartha, he goes into exile, because Ambedkar very presently points out that it is not possible. It's impossible to assume that Ambedkar, who was Buddha, who was later Buddha, who was Siddhartha, was about 29 years old when he went into Parivraj. And to assume that by the age of 29 he had neither seen a dead body or an ill person or an old person is a little too much to believe. So this basically the argument for Parivraj is an argument for dissent, for democracy. Here is a person who is saying very clearly that I am not going to side by my tribe simply because the tribe, in a moment of self-righteousness, believes that it is right and its enemies are wrong. So this notion of the us versus other, this notion of an enemy existing out there against whom we should all unite, that notion is repugnant to Siddhartha. So he chooses, he says, I choose exile, I choose the life of a Parivrajak to this life of, blind following of a tribal identity. So if you can just, if you just substitute, if you substitute this tribal identity with a caste identity, or if you substitute this tribal identity with a linguistic identity, or you substitute this tribal identity with a national identity, then you will understand this whole movement towards becoming a Parivrajak in its proper context. So the first thing is the individual's right to dissent, the individual's right to exercise a democratic choice, and the individual's right to exercise logic and reason against established beliefs. So that is the reason. I mean, it begins with reason, it begins with rationality, it begins with young Siddhartha, who's not that young. 29 at that time was not considered a very Siddhartha, given the fact that Siddhartha had his first son at the age of 16. I mean, he was married quite early to his wife, and his son was Yashodhara. I mean, the son was born early. Given that fact that 29 is not a very young at the young age in the 6th century BC, when the life expectancy must have been 45 or 50 at the most, in general. So that this value for dissent. I mean, you find the same thing you find the same thing later on being repeated by many people. For instance, you find the same thing being repeated by Rabindranath Tagore when he said, if nobody wants to walk with you, you walk alone. Ekla chalo. So it's like saying, that you will trust your powers of reason, you will trust your powers of logic, of reasoning, of enlightenment, and you will not believe something just because your caste believes in it, or your group believes in it, or the mob believes in it, or your nation believes in those, tribe and nation getting confounded. So it's not like that. So that is one reason where that's one particular point on which Ambedkar he actually changes the whole notion. He actually reinterprets Parivraj in a very different way altogether. And instead of this belief in a group identity, instead of this belief in in following blindly what your group wants to say, what Gautam Buddha is, in fact, what Siddhartha is actually asserting, as Ambedkar points out later on, is the principle of Maitri, the principle of friendship, the principle of not dividing ourselves along lines of us and the other. So that, I think, is a very important message which comes from number one, Buddha. The other things which then you have so many other things. You have, for instance, then you come to the whole. You see, this whole text is basically divided into it's divided into eight books. The book by Ambedkar, Buddha and his Dhamma, although it was published posthumously in 1957, and it has been published and republished many times. It's part of the volume 11 of Dr. Babasaheb Ambedkar writings and speeches by the Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. Government of India published it first in 1979 with a list of various sources and index and so on. And he says that, there is the first thing which Ambedkar points out in this book is that, that there was in the 1940s and 50s, there was increasing interest in Buddhism amongst Indians. And why did so many Indians wanted to know about Buddhism and so on? So he answers these questions. The other question which he if you see this book carefully, you'll find that the first book is about he talks about three problems of becoming a Buddhist. The first problem is about the Four Noble Truths, which are called the Four Iron Truths. And Ambedkar questions whether these Four Iron Truths were originally a part of Buddha's teachings, as they make the gospel of Buddhism a gospel of pessimism and so on and so forth. The third problem is the contextual. The third problem there is a contradiction in Buddhism, because Buddha, on the one hand, denies the existence of the soul, but on the other hand, he also affirms the doctrine of karma and rebirth. So there is a little contradiction there. So Ambedkar talks a little bit about that as well. The fourth is about the creation of a bhikkhu. Was the Buddha talking about a path through which the bhikkhu had to be created, that everybody who follows the Buddha should become a bhikkhu? Ambedkar then questions whether the creation of the bhikkhu was meant to create a perfect man or to create a social servant, so on. So he says very clearly that if the bhikkhu becomes a perfect man, then he can also become a very selfish man and become absolutely, he's only committed to bhiksha and so on and so forth, and he becomes totally useless for society. The other thing he says is, he says that to be a Buddha does not, to become a Buddha, to become Prabuddha, or to become like the Buddha does not mean to become a bhikkhu. You can be a grihast and be a bhikkhu. You can be a grihast and inculcate the values of Buddhism, because Buddhism is above all a question of moral value. It's a question of ethics. It's a question, and all these things are then dilated upon in the 8 small books which comprise the Buddha and his Dhamma by Ambedkar. So you have this. If you read that book, you'll get all kinds of details about Siddhartha's life, his youthfulness. His youthful life, and how he became the Buddha, how he took parivraj and so on and so forth. All these stories are there. He talks about the tales behind the conversion. And the other thing which is, since you have spoken about feminism, and I think it would be pertinent to point out whether Gautam wanted women to be part of the Sangha, because sometimes he's accused of being misogynist, or he's accused of not being in favor of admitting women into the Buddhist Sangha. So we can only point out that on the basis of these texts and the kind of evidence which we have, that Siddhartha Buddha was initially not in favor of admitting women into the Sangha. And Iqbal Singh actually, he narrates several incidents from the Buddha's life, which actually led him to the conclusion that having young women in the Sangha would be a distraction for the men. And instead of committing themselves to the task of serving society, serving the sick, serving the injured and the ill and so on and so forth, they would become more busy in trying to please these young women. And, there would be a danger of kind of lascivious behavior creeping into the Sangha, lust coming into the minds of the younger bhikkhus and so on and so forth. They would stray. Women would be, women in that sense is seen as, generally as basically, pralobhan. Basically, it's a kind of a women as, they're like, they can make men stray from their tasks and so on and so forth. So, gradually, but then Buddha had a very important follower, as you know, his name was Anand, who actually then convinced Buddha to admit women into the Sangha. And Mahaprajapati Gautami was given the task to enforce the 8 chief rules which initiated her life as a bhikkhuni. So the concept of bhikkhuni, the concept of bhikkhu and bhikkhuni are both there in the Sangha, and women also. I mean, there was certain segregation between men and women because he didn't want the sexes to mingle and then get distracted from their primary task of serving society and serving the cause of Dhamma and so on and so forth. So you have a bhikkhuni Sangh, you have a bhikkhu Sangh, and you have a bhikkhuni Sangh. So he came down to the conclusion that women can be part of the Sangh as well. So we find the other extremely important thing which Ambedkar talks about when he actually delineates the difference between the usual religions, especially the Semitic, even the non-Semitic religion, and Buddha's Dhamma. So let's take the. Somebody is speaking in the background, please.
Sir, Dr. Niranjana Sharma ji. Sir, आपका continuous mic on है. Please, I request, please. आप off कीजिए mic, please.
Sorry.
Continuously, ma'am. Please, कीजिए.
Okay. सबसे बड़ी चीज बुद्ध के बारे में ये है कि वो बुद्ध कभी ये नहीं कहते थे कि मैं जो है वो भगवान का बेटा हूं या मैं भगवान का पैगंबर हूं या भगवान ने मुझे कोई खास काम करने के लिए जमीन पे भेजा है. इनफैक्ट Buddhism belongs to this field of the philosophical tradition in India, which is normally associated with the Gnostic tradition. So Gnostic tradition means you are almost agnostic as far as God is concerned, and you don't believe in the revelations, so-called revelations made by God in the Vedas and the Vedic literature. So he did not claim a place for himself in his own Dhamma. He did not say that, I am the main creator of this Dhamma. Let's take the case of Christianity for that matter. Christ claims, Christ claimed that he was the Son of God. Christians claim that Christ was the Son of God who was born out of Virgin Mary and so on and so forth. So you must believe Christ, because the word of Christ then is the word of God. Similarly, if you look at Islam, you find that, Muhammad very clearly proclaiming that he was a prophet sent by God. In the case of quote unquote, in the case of Hinduism, you find especially, Krishna claimed to be God himself, and that the Gita was his word. That it is that Gita Upadesh is basically the revealed word of God, and so on and so forth. Similarly, you find people like Swami Dayanand Saraswati in the 19th century saying that the Vedas are revealed by gods and so on. But there is no such claim made by the Buddha. So while most religions are, basically they are revelations, suddenly at a particular moment, a Paighambar or a Rasul or a messenger of God, he finds that God has revealed certain truths to him and that it is his job to convey those truths, that truth revealed to him by God, to society. So Ambedkar ऐसे बोलते हैं, he says a revealed religion is so called because it is a message of God to his creatures to worship their maker and to save their souls. So if you want to save your souls, you believe in what the messenger is saying to you. Because if you don't do that, you might be, you might be condemned to eternal damnation. And in the Buddha, we find a complete, total rejection of these, these description of the prophet or, descriptions of the messenger of God and so on. He was no messiah. Buddhism is not a messianic religion. It doesn't tell you that, एक खास युग आएगा, उसमें कोई महात्मा आएंगे जो आपको बचाएंगे, आपका उद्धार करेंगे, जैसे वो जैसे वो लिखते हैं यदा यदा ही धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति, जैसे वो जो उसमें पूरा का पूरा जो नोशन है कि जब बहुत ग्लानि हो जाएगी, जब जो है पूरा पतन हो जाएगा, तब जो है कोई अवतार आएगा और अवतार आपको बचाएगा और आपके धर्म का जो है उद्धार करेगा, आपके समाज का उद्धार करेगा। ऐसी कोई भावना, ऐसा कोई ख्याल हमको बुद्धिज्म में नजर नहीं आता। तो बुद्ध क्या कहते हैं? how does the Buddha describe himself? Very simple. जैसे हम लोग कहते हैं कि हम, when you are guiding research or when, let's say you are a supervisor of a student, what do? Do you spoon feed the student? Do you, at each step, do you tell the student what to do? All you basically do is you steer the student. Can
Ravi Prasad ji, please mic off कीजिए.
It is not from my
Ravi
side.
Prasad, sir, आपका mic on है.
Okay.
Please.
But, okay.
So the best description of Buddha is the Margdata. Margdata, one who shows the way. That's all. One who shows the way to salvation. And salvation, वो बुद्ध आपका salvation नहीं करेगा. आपको जो निर्वाण की प्राप्ति करनी है या मोक्ष की प्राप्ति करनी है, आपको अगर salvation चाहिए, आपको अपने आप को ये जो माया की दुनिया है जिसमें आप चीजों से चिपके रहते हैं, मोह माया की दुनिया जो है, जिसमें आपको लोभ होता है, जिसमें बहुत ज्यादा अटैचमेंट होती है, तो मुझे समझ में नहीं आता। अगर किसी को नहीं दिलचस्पी है तो वो सेमिनार छोड़ क्यों नहीं देता?
Sir, I don't know what happened today, but we have already stick to this point कि आपको अपना mic mute करना है. I don't know why they are doing.
आप अगर कोई एडमिन है इसका, तो आप इनको बाहर कीजिए, आप इनको सेमिनार से बाहर कर दीजिए। ये मतलब we are trying to talk about something serious here, और यहाँ पे मतलब इन लोगों को, ये एकेडमिक लोग हैं, इनको इस चीज की अकल होनी चाहिए ना।
जी सर, बिल्कुल।
आप इनको बाहर कीजिए, इजेक्ट देम। आपके एडमिन कौन है? आज कौन है एडमिन?
सर, आई एम ट्राइंग टू कांटेक्ट हिम।
नहीं, कांटेक्ट नहीं, आप बाहर कर दीजिए इनको। जस्ट थ्रो देम आउट ऑफ द क्लास।
ओके, श्योर सर।
मतलब वो ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स की तरह पेश आ रहे हैं जो क्लास को डिस्टर्ब करते रहते हैं। आपने देखा होगा ना, क्लासेस में ऐसे स्टूडेंट्स होते हैं जो खुद भी नहीं पढ़ना चाहते और दूसरों को भी नहीं पढ़ने देना चाहते। ऐसे लोग, देखिए, अनुशासित तरीके से हमको करना होगा ना चीजों को।
ये डॉक्टर, ये तेंजिन जो है सर, प्लीज आपका कंप्लीटली
जो ये तेंजिंग है, जो भी है, इनसे कहिए कि भाई अपना माइक बंद करें, इनको समझ में नहीं आ रहा है।
माइक प्लीज सर बंद कर लीजिए। Sir,
Ma'am, I'm having some problems. I cannot appear my part on the screen.
okay,
But
sir. But
the top.
I can see your mic is
माइक को
the.
म्यूट कीजिए ना आप.
Yeah, I somehow I couldn't manage to do that. I
Please
thought
mute the mic, please. It's a very simple thing.
Some technical issue is there, sir. Sir, try to find out the
Every 10
solution.
seconds, at least then don't speak. How is one supposed to continue with this?
Sir, please. I request, sir. Please.
So what does what does being prabuddh mean? It doesn't mean being spoon-fed. It doesn't mean becoming a bhakt. It does not mean blindly following somebody. And Buddha is very clear. He says that an individual's salvation has to be attained by his or her own efforts. So बहुत clearly, तीसरी और चौथी किताब में, इन द थर्ड एंड फोर्थ बुक ऑफ द बुद्धा एंड हिज धम्मा, बहुत क्लियरली बुद्ध बताते हैं कि धर्म क्या है और धम्म क्या नहीं है, बहुत क्लियरली. तो धम्म जो क्या है उसके बारे में आपको पता चलता है. वो कहते हैं कि to maintain purity, to be pure in your intentions, to be pure in your thought, to be pure in your speech, to be pure in your behavior is dhamma. To try and reach some perfection in life, let's say if you are a writer, you want to perfect the art of writing. If you are a painter, you will perfect the art of painting. If you are an actor, you will try to perfect the vocation you have chosen. If you are an academic, then you need to, your acharan, your behavior should be like that of an academic. If you are a professor, then your whole behavior, whole demeanor, your thought, your process, it should be like an academic. So the search for perfection and the possibility of reaching perfection in life is dhamma. And to live in nirvana is dhamma, meaning not being, nirvana means to be free. There is a certain intellectual, emotional, cultural freedom in which you live. You are not attached to these strings. To give up craving, I mean, you don't crave for things. You're not over ambitious. You don't want material things all the time. You are not craving for, you don't crave for sensuous pleasures all the time. You are not a hedonist. You don't crave for drink. You don't crave for particular kinds of foods all the time. That to give up those cravings is also part of them. And one of the most important things about the Dhamma of Buddha is that you believe that all things, all compound things, all material things, number one, he doesn't believe in immaterial things. All material things, all compound things are impermanent. They are in a flux. That things keep changing. They are never the same. So,
Excuse me, sir. Sir, I request. Actually, we are running short of time.
Yeah, so I'm just going to take 2 minutes and finish this off.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
And then also to accept that karma is the instrument of the moral order, that you should be judged by your karma, and your karma should not harm people in general. He also lays down what is not dhamma. So number one, belief in the supernatural is not dhamma, so no superstitions, please. Belief in Ishwar, God, is not essentially part of dhamma, so you don't really have to believe in God to practice dhamma. The dhamma also rejects the union of the Brahma with the self, which is also that. So he rejects completely the Vedic learning and the Upanishadic learning and so on and so forth. And the belief in soul is not dhamma. Belief in sacrifices is not dhamma. Belief in ritual is not dhamma. In fact, reading books about Dhamma is not Dhamma. And the belief in the infallibility of books of Dhamma is not Dhamma. So all these things, all these things are extremely important. All these things are extremely, important to understand what the Buddha talks about. So overall, when we call the Buddha Buddha, when we say he is Prabuddha, and when we talk about Prabodhan, or when we talk about the enlightenment, and when we look at the words of people like Immanuel Kant and the other Enlightenment thinkers, we find that Gautam Buddha, in our tradition, in our history, was one person, one human being who was truly enlightened. And he says very clearly that he is not against belief, but what he says is, if you want to believe in something, you must come to that belief on the basis of reason, on the basis of self-interrogation, on the basis of self-criticism, and on the basis of questioning. Not to receive wisdom just because that wisdom is coming from a Baba or a Guru or a person who is supposed to be the messenger of God, is not the correct way of conducting yourself in a productive manner in society. And Maitri, equality, total destruction of hierarchies, these are extremely important for Buddhism, and this resonates with feminism, which is also which also talks about the sisterhood, brotherhood, Maitri, equality, and also destruction of hierarchies in society. Thank you very much. We can have, if you want to.
Thank you, sir, for your yes, sir. Thank you, sir, for your valuable words. Sir, there is a concept of bhikshuni. You have told us, but in few sects we don't have this kind of what should I say, facility. So women can be bhikshuni. So
Yes.
I think it is the good thing. We can go for this, yoga, and we can call it parman or parinirvan. So thank you so much, sir, for telling all these valuable points. Thank you
Also,
so much, sir.
when you said going for yoga, you mean, see, yoga, Buddha is a yogi. Yogi is somebody who does not commit himself to excesses. Remember that.
Okay, sir.
Yoga means Madhyam Marg.
Yes.
The definition of an extremist cannot be a yogi. A man whose heart is filled with hatred, a man whose heart is filled with hatred for the other, a man whose ideology is based on hating somebody, he can never be a yogi. Remember that.
Sure, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Before moving further, I would request to all the participants, please
may I
keep your
leave?
mic.
Am I permitted to leave the meeting, or
Sir, it's your wish, sir. It's your wish.
Normally,
if you'll be here.
Normally the chair's address is not questioned, but if somebody really wants to, if somebody is very desperate to ask something, maybe I can take a couple of questions. If somebody is, if not, then I'll leave the meeting.
Sir, if you can spare some time, this is Dr. Ojha here. So if you can spare some time, we will be having a panel discussion on feminist perspective of Buddhism. If you can spare some time, it will be fruitful for us to get your comment on it.
कब हो रहा है वो?
अभी हो रहा है सर.
अच्छा ठीक है, तो मैं बैठता हूँ, फिर मैं सुनूंगा, मैं अपना माइक ऑफ कर रहा हूँ और वीडियो भी ऑफ कर रहा हूँ और सुनूंगा. मैं हूँ, यही हूँ मैं, और मुझे सवाल उठाने होंगे तो मैं सवाल भी उठाऊंगा, अगर आप लोगों को एतराज ना हो तो.
जी बिल्कुल, you're most welcome, sir. Thank you, sir.
Can I get a question to Professor Anirudh?
जी डॉक्टर हर्षिता जी बोलिए.
No, I'm Smita speaking.
ये तो कोई डॉक्टर हर्षिता बता रही. अच्छा स्मिता जी बोलिए, फरमाइए, बताइए.
Thank you very much, Professor.
Where are you speaking from?
I'm based in Delhi.
Do you belong to North India or are you from
No,
South?
I'm a Maharashtrian.
Okay, Maharashtrian. Very good. Very good. Then Ambedkar is very close to you.
I fully agree with whatever you sort of propagated those ideas drawing from Baba Saheb's Buddha and his Dhamma.
Correct.
And I was sort of stuck with this idea. I mean, it's fine, Buddha's teaching, there's a concept which is one is deeply engaged in practicing also. And since you are Maharashtrian, you can see that how in Maharashtra these ideas of karuna, compassion.
So by the way, I am a Maharashtrian more in name than anything else. I was born in the Northeast and I was brought up in Delhi. So
Okay.
देशपांडे माझं नाव आहे, पण माझे रूट्स वगैरे सगळे इथेच आहेत.
पण तुम्ही मराठी बोलता.
मला मराठी समजतं पण.
So I was sort of thinking, because how do we, carry forward this concept of Maitri in praxis? Because that is what something really bothers me.
Praxis means you practice. Praxis means a philosophy of practice.
Yes.
When we say Marxism is a philosophy of praxis, when we say Buddhism is a philosophy of praxis. So metaphysical philosophy is one thing. आप थोड़ा सा कैमरा को नीचे कीजिए, आपका चेहरा कट रहा है, कैमरा खाली गया, स्क्रीन नाउ आई कैन सी. Praxological होने का मतलब है I practice what I preach, what I talk about. I don't preach because I am a teacher, I am not a preacher. तो मैं तो preach करता नहीं हूँ. आप प्रैक्टिस कीजिए. अगर आप बोलते हैं मैं हायरार्की को नहीं मानता हूं, तो आपको कास्ट, जेंडर, क्लास, रिलीजन, कल्चरल हायरार्की को नहीं मानना होगा. तभी तो आप इक्वालिटी की बात. किसी बाबा साहेब अंबेडकर वाज अ ग्रेट एडवोकेट ऑफ, ही वाज एन एनलाइटनमेंट थिंकर. He was a great advocate of the slogans of the French Revolution: equality, fraternity, liberty. Now, if you take all three together, one cannot be divorced from the other. If you are not equal, you cannot be free. If you are not free, you cannot be equal. And if you are not equal and free, you cannot be fraternal.
Yes.
So, when the French revolutionaries coined this slogan, equality, liberty, equality, and fraternity. Liberty means to have a choice. Equality means the moment you say, okay, there is hierarchy, that the Brahman is superior to non-Brahmins or the upper caste is superior to the lower caste, then the question of fraternity does not arise. So, in the Manu Smriti or in Tulsidas' Ramcharitmanas, there is no fraternity, there is no room. But in Raidas, there is a room for fraternity. In the Bhakti tradition, there is a room for fraternity, equality, and liberty. So, dissent, democracy, liberty, equality, and fraternity will go together. If you believe in some Baba, or you believe in some Ma or some Guru Ma or some God man and so on and so forth, then you are already abdicating this path. Then you are becoming a fanatical follower, a blind follower of somebody. The moment you become a blind follower of somebody, you develop intolerance. You become a bhakt. So both Buddha and Ambedkar, both are against bhakti. Remember Ambedkar's words delivered to the nation at the time when Ambedkar was dedicating the constitution to the country. Remember what he said. He said, in personal life, maybe bhakti can be a path to salvation. But in political life, in public life, bhakti will surely lead to dictatorship. And in the back of his mind, he had the authority, the authorial figure of Gandhi when he spoke that. That there are these small, the parties and the group, they all have these small dictators. And they have the groups of followers who will not allow anybody to speak against them. So this whole system goes against democracy. And Ambedkar was a Democrat. And one thing which he points out, one thing which actually attracts him to the Buddha, is the fact that Buddha is an Astik. And Buddha refuses to accept received wisdom. आपका enlightenment शुरू उससे होता है. Immanuel Kant जब लिखता है, what is enlightenment? He says, enlightenment means I doubt. Buddhism begins with the doubt. वो डाउट करता है. परिव्रज के लिए जब जाता है तो डाउट से जाता है, वो बिलीफ से नहीं जाता. So it is this dialectics between doubt and belief, which is dialectics, question answer sessions. जब बुद्ध बैठते थे, वो जब वो प्रवचन क्या कहते थे, जब वो बात करते थे तो लोग अपोज करते थे. वो opponents को भी encourage करते थे. You remember there were many opponents who used to abuse him also. गालियां भी देते थे. लेकिन आज आप नहीं इमेजिन कर सकते थे कि किसी बाबा के दरबार में जाके या किसी की आप जाके कोई गाली कोई कुछ बोलेगा तो उसके भक्त जो है उसको मारने को आएंगे. तो वो इसीलिए वो when we say हायरार्की, आप फेमिनिज्म की बात करेंगे, बुद्धिज्म और फेमिनिज्म की आप बात करेंगे. इनफैक्ट देयर इज समथिंग कॉल्ड बुद्धिस्ट इकोनॉमिक्स ऑल्सो. आजकल लोग इन चीजों को भूल गए हैं. शूमाकर अपनी एक किताब शूमाकर साहब ने बहुत पहले लिखी थी, बड़ी मशहूर किताब है, स्मॉल इज ब्यूटीफुल. उसमें एक चैप्टर है बुद्धिस्ट इकोनॉमिक्स. कैन बुद्धिज्म बी अ वे ऑफ डूइंग इकोनॉमिक्स ऑल्सो, जिसमें इक्वालिटी, मैत्री, रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन, ये बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट चीजें हैं, जिसको हम लोग डेवलपमेंट इकोनॉमिक्स भी कहते हैं. जिसको हम लोग कहते हैं कि ये रीडिस्ट्रीब्यूशन ऑफ वेल्थ की बात करते हैं, जिसकी वजह से इसीलिए मैं बुद्धिज्म को लेके चलता हूँ. You're talking about the environment, you're talking about the Paryavaran which is being destroyed because of this inequality, where too few people are consuming too much and the rest don't have anything to consume. They only bear the costs of that consumption. Now, Buddhism is against that. Buddhism wants a more equal society. So Buddhism that way squares with socialism. Buddhism squares with environmental consciousness. Buddhism squares with sustainable development, because he says don't be attached, don't consume too much. So in that sense, Buddha actually anticipates many of the problems which we are facing today, because we are living in a highly materialistic world. तो वो ये सब चीजें जो है ना बहुत जुड़ी हुई हैं. ये these are not separate things. This then you will lead to you will move towards a new philosophical way of life. और उसको फिर प्रैक्टिस करना पड़ता. अगर मैं कहता हूँ मैं हायरार्की में बिलीव नहीं करता हूँ, तो मैं अपने घर में चैरिटी बिगिंस एट होम. मुझे अपने घर में वो हायरार्की मैं अपने बच्चों को मैं ये नहीं कहता कि मेरे सामने तुम कुछ नहीं बोलोगे. मेरे बच्चे मुझे हमेशा क्वेश्चन करते थे. हमारे घर में क्वेश्चन आंसर, झगड़ा, ये कांस्टेंट डिस्कशन होते रहते थे. वो हायरार्की नहीं थी, रिस्पेक्ट थी, लेकिन हायरार्की नहीं थी.
That's democratic.
Yes, that's democratic. Buddha is a Democrat. Yes. Above all, he is a Democrat.
सर मी तुम्हाला भेटायला येईल कधीतरी.
या ना. आपण कुठे आहेत?
मी इग्नोला असते सर, स्कूल ऑफ जेंडर अँड डेव्हलपमेंट स्टडीजला, आणि मी जेएनयू शिकलेली आहे. तुमच्या बहिणीला ओळखते मी.
हा अंजली देशपांडे का? अच्छा, तुमचं पूर्ण नाव काय आहे? स्मिता?
माझं नाव आहे स्मिता पाटील. मी मूळची नागपूरची, आणि मला आवडेल तुम्हाला मी काय लिहिते ते दाखवायला.
तुमचं नाव फारच फेमस आहे, स्मिता पाटील. I was a great fan of Smita Patil anyway. So definitely come to Delhi University, come to the history department.
Thank you so much.
आर्या साहेब जवळ माझा फोन नंबर आहे, तुम्ही घ्या त्यांच्याशी फोन घेऊन तुम्ही फोन करा, भेट करूया.
मी अपॉइंटमेंट घेऊन येईन.
अपॉइंटमेंट नहीं है, ये फॉर्मेलिटी नहीं है. जस्ट गिव मी अ कॉल व्हेन आई एम फ्री. आई विल टेल यू कैन कम टू साउथ कॅम्पस होते. तो तुमचं घर कुठे आहे?
मी वसंतकुंज मध्ये राहते.
सो यू कैन कम टू साउथ कैंपस समडे. विल हैव अ कप ऑफ टी और व्हाटएवर जो रेचर्ड कैंटीन में मिलेगा. You can have a nice chat. South campus is better. करेंगे next time. From January I'll be coming regularly. My classes will start in South campus and my previous class.
Sure sir.
Thank you so much. होता है तो नंतर भेट करूया.
हो निश्चित. Thank you.
छान झाला तुमच्याशी बोलायला.
Thank you sir. Now I would like to welcome our panelist, Dr. Shedap Tenzin. He is a faculty member of Department of Indo-Tibetan Studies, Vishwa Bharati University, Shanti Niketan. Graduate from Central Institute of Higher Tibetan Studies, Sarnath, Varanasi. He is MA, MPhil, PhD from University of Delhi. And he has his expertise in Tibetan language and Tibetan Buddhist studies. So, sir, I would like to call you for a lecture, please. Come, sir.
Thank you, ma'am.
Dr. Shedap Tenzin.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you. I'm having some problem here. I couldn't find out my, part of the screen. So that's why I could not make it mute also. But I keep silence throughout the lecture. Anyway, yeah. So shall I start without video?
Thank you so much, sir.
Okay. I'll be speaking on how the Buddhist logic.
If it's possible, then it will be good for us, sir. Sir, if we will be visible for us, so it is more, comprehensive for us.
Managed to find out here. I haven't seen a couple of panels here, but my case I could not find here. Anyway, shall I start without video? Yeah.
Yeah, we'd like to see. We'd like to see you, Dr. Dedik. We'd like to
start. If some problem is there, you can.
No, appearing on my mobile screen. That's why I could not make it even mute also throughout your lecture. Yeah. Anyway, shall I start?
Sir. No issue, sir. Please.
I'll be speaking on how Buddhist logic studies are developed in Tibet. Before doing that, I would like to give a little bit of introduction about its language and how Buddhism came to Tibet in general. And then I will be speaking on the development of Buddhist logic in Tibet. Respected Chairperson, Professor Anurag Deshpande and the conveners. And at the outset, I would like to thank to my colleague, Dr. Rika Ojaji, for giving me this opportunity to say a few words in this interesting conference on Buddhism. Regarding Tibetan language, linguistically, it belongs to Tibeto-Burmese group of Sino-Tibetan family. But the Tibetan script, we call it Ujjain, is modeled on Indian scripts in the 7th century AD, a Brahmi script in the 7th century AD. And at the same time, Buddhism was introduced to Tibet during the 7th century AD. So according to a noted French linguist, Tibetan linguist, Professor Nicolas Tonando of France, University of Province, he said that the nations having the ancient scripts or characters are very rare nowadays in the world. Out of 7,000 languages of the world, 90 to 95% of them do not possess the script except spoken language. Most probably, there may be around 200 of them having the scripts, but many of them had borrowed from Latin scripts such as English. Similarly, Korean, Japanese, and Sino-Vietnamese used to write their text in Chinese character before. Nowadays, they have their own script. The types of script may be around 50. Moreover, the scripts which have the history of more than 1,000 years are very rare in the world. There are only 15 of them which have the history of more than 1,000 years old. So within these 15 languages, Tibetan script is one among them. So this is about the language and how it was prevailed to Tibet. It's a well-known fact that Indo-Tibetan studies began right from the beginning when the minister called Thumna Samboda devised the new script for Tibetan language in the early 7th century AD under the royal patronage of Emperor Songtsen Gampo, one of the mightiest king of Tibet. The team of Indian Pandits, Chinese scholars, and Thumna Samboda himself initiated the actual Indo-Tibetan studies program. The first attempt they made for the translation project were the 21 texts of Avalokiteshvara. It's all in Sanskrit. This, under the royal patronage of King Emperor Songtsen Gampo, Thumna Samboda, along with 16 young Tibetan students, were sent to India to study Buddhism, Sanskrit, and ancient Indian scripts prevalent at that time. Thumna Samboda, after 6 or 7 years of study in India under the tutorship of Devavidya Sinha and Bhaman Dipikara, he returned back to Tibet and devised a new script, followed by the composition of 8 grammatical texts. Subsequently, after the invention of script and the composition of grammatical texts, respectively, at the instigation of King's command, the team of scholars led by Thumna Samboda began to undertake the translation work. And the formal introduction of Buddhism took place in Tibet in the early 7th century AD, which means the Indo-Tibetan cultural exchange program actually began in the 7th century AD. The majority of, I'll just give some of the points. So the Buddhism start in the 7th century AD. And then the Tibetan scholars collaboratively translate the thousands of Sanskrit texts into Tibetan. That begins in the 7th century AD till 13th century AD. And within this voluminous text, it amounts to like 4,567 Sanskrit texts translated in Tibetan, which is still preserved nowadays. And most of them were virtually lost in India. I mean, the Sanskrit original text completely lost in India. So in some of the Tibetan monasteries in Tibet, the tradition of learning Sanskrit grammar, especially Saraswati Vyakaran, is still very much alive. Sanskrit grammar is studied through the Tibetan translation and transliteration. The sutras are also memorized through the Tibetan translation. There are together 6 major Sanskrit grammatical treatises that were translated into Tibetan, which is now incorporated in the Tanjur. In the Vyakarana Shastra series of Tanjur, there are 30 Sanskrit grammatical texts. 20 Ayurvedic texts were incorporated in Tanjur, and 8 Indian Niti Shastras are preserved in Tanjur. In fact, Tanjur is one of the 2 canonical texts of Tibetan literature. So the Indo-Tibetan literature not only concerned for Buddhist texts. Apart from Buddhist texts, we have the genre like Buddhist logic, Sanskrit poetry, Sanskrit drama, Ayurvedic texts, and interesting thing is that the portion of Mahabharata and Ramayana were also discovered from Tunhuang caves. Tunhuang is northwest of China. So from that cave, we have discovered the portion of Ramayana, which is translated into Tibetan. So I would say that this is the first language which Ramayana was translated into other foreign language. So as a result of this long period of Indo-Tibetan cultural contact, the voluminous Tibetan canonical literature known as Kanjur and Tenjur came into existence. See, the time duration from 7th century to 13th century, I already mentioned, there were about 4,567 texts preserved in Tibetan canonical texts called Kanjur and Tenjur. These 2 big groups, it is something like, when Buddhists were committed to writing in Sri Lanka, they have divided into 3 baskets, like 3 Pitaka. So similarly, in the case of Tibetan, we have divided into 2 big groups called Kanjur and Tenjur. Kanjur comprises of 108 volumes, which concerns with Buddha's own teaching, I mean his own sutras, and Tenjur, that is referring to Indian commentarial texts by Narendra scholars such as Nagarjuna, Vasubandhu, Dingnag, Dharmakirti, and so on. So these 2 canonical texts are still exist in Tibetan version, and among them, many of them were lost in India. So, so this is just the brief introduction of Tibetan language and how Buddhism came to Tibet. And now let's speak on how the Buddhist logic developed in Tibet. There is a text called Mahayana Sutra Alankar by Maitrenath, in which he says that in Tibetan, I quote, so which means in English, if one is not well versed in the 5 fields of knowledge, even the Supreme Arya will not attain the complete enlightenment. Therefore, the learning of logic is regarded to be one of the most important Buddhist monastic curriculum. In fact, the 5 sciences of knowledge, Vidyastan, in this we find one among them is the study of logic and epistemology. So prior to great Buddhist logician Acharya Dingnag, there were no Buddhist logic texts arranged systematically to defend and prove one's philosophical theory against non-Buddhist school. Hence, in the history of Buddhist logic, Dingnaga was regarded to be the founder of Buddhist logic, and he has been called the medieval Nyaya as a whole. And the Buddhist logic that introduced in Tibet is none other than Indian Buddhist logic system that began to translate in the 8th century AD for the first time in the history of dissemination of Buddhism in Tibet. Initially, the contents of Buddhist logic are found scattered in the Buddhist canonical text prior to the appearance of great Buddhist logician Acharya Dignaga. Acharya Dignaga was responsible for systematical arrangement and collection of scattered contents of logic. From the very early age, Acharya Dignaga was ordained in the Buddhist Sangha and became well-versed in all the 5 fields of science of knowledge. He was especially well-versed in the field of logic and was popularly known during his time one of the best and finest logicians among both Buddhist and non-Buddhist logicians. Before working on Pramana Samuchaya, that is his main text actually, before he composed Pramana Samuchaya, he initially wrote the commentaries on Abhidharma Kosh Karika of Acharya Vasubandhu, then Gunaya Paryatantra Stotra of Acharya Naga, and non-Buddhist texts such as Alaman Pariksha and so forth. His monographs on Buddhist logic texts runs into more than hundreds. So this was, before he composed the Pramana Samuchaya. So he wrote very short, kind of writings on Buddhist logic. So as the contents of these monographs of Acharya Dignaga on logic appears to be scattered and incomplete in a single text, he then compiled all these monographs into one whole complete Buddhist logic text. So as a result, the primary source of Buddhist logical treatise, popularly known as Pramana Samuchaya, came into existence. Acharya Dharmakirti and another great Buddhist logician, Acharya Dignaga, appeared in the later century, who thoroughly studied the entire logical works composed by his predecessor, Acharya Dignaga. As a result of these, he eventually wrote the commentary to Pramana Samuchaya called Pramana Vartika Karika. So these two texts are very much, studied in Tibetan monastic institutes, even nowadays. Yeah. So as a result of this, he eventually wrote the commentary to Pramana Samuchaya called Pramana Vartika Karika, and his commentary, Pramana Vartika Briti, photo commentary, Pramana Vartika, as a primary source, and other minor commentary texts, namely Pramana Vinishya and Danai Bintu Prakarana, Sambandha Pariksha Prakarana, comment Samatana Radha Siddhi Nama Prakarana, Vadanya Nama Prakarana. Commentaries to Acharya Dharmakirti's major and minor works by later Indian masters, namely Devendra Buddhi, Shakya Buddhi, Prakritara Gupta, Acharya Dharmottara, Brahman Shankarananda, etc. So these are the prominent Buddhist logicians in India, and these traditions are very much influenced in the Tibetan Buddhist logical systems. The Rahul Sankrityan, in the early 20th century, the great scholar, he was supposed to translate restore, from Tibetan source of Tibetan version of Pramana Vartika into Sanskrit. And this project, and he started to translate this Buddhist, the Pramana Vartika logic. He realized that in Tibet, he heard from some source that in Tibet, the original manuscript of Pramana Vartika is available, especially in the central part of Tibet. So that's why he went to Tibet, and from his 3-4 times visit in Tibet, he brought hundreds of Sanskrit manuscript and Tibetan manuscript to India, and which is now preserved in Patna Museum. The above mentioned logical texts, Pramana Samuchaya and Pramana Vartika, are the two primary sources that are still thoroughly taught in the Tibetan monastic institutions. Apart from the logical works of Acharya Dignaga and Acharya Dharmakirti, there are about 50 works on logic by Indian masters, the Tibetan translation of which is incorporated in Tenjur canonical text. So we have more than 50 Indian logical texts preserved in Tibetan canonical text, which is in Tibetan version actually. the lineage of oral instruction of Buddhist logical teaching in Tibetan traditions come down to us continuously without broken till now. In the earliest period of Buddhism in Tibet, in history of Tibetan Buddhism, we find there are two phases. The first phase, which we call Temangathar, which literally means earliest grade, that is 7th century and lasted till 10th century. So and then the second part is start from 11th century till now. So there are two phases of Buddhism in Tibet in this way. So during the earliest period of Buddhism in Tibet, Acharya Shantalakshita visited Tibet at the royal invitation of Emperor Tshizong Deuxin. He is not only known for his establishment of Sangha tradition based on Mula Saraswati and Vinaya tradition in Tibet, but he is also very well known for his depth insight in the field of logic, which is well proved by his masterpiece entitled Tattva Sangraha Karika. He said that there is neither a Tibetan commentary to Tattva Sangraha Karika, nor there is a lineage of oral instruction within the Tibetan tradition. His disciple Acharya Kamalshil wrote a critical commentary to it entitled Tattva Sangraha Panjika. It was jointly into Tibetan by Indian Pandit Devendra Badra and Lotsavar Dajur Sharaf. So the dissemination of logic in the early spread of Buddhism in Tibet. In fact, during the, as I already mentioned, that there are two phases of Buddhism in Tibet. In the early spread, the logic texts some of the logic texts were translated, but they could not disseminate all of it in the Tibetan Buddhist monasteries. However, after the 11th century, it was flourished, and which is continuing till now. And not only in Tibet, in Bhutan, the southern part of Nepal, and then through the Indian Himalayas, from Arunachal to Ladakh. So the eminent Lotsawa, eminent Tibetan translators of the early spirit of Buddhism in Tibet, Lotsawa Shang Nishe, they translated Nyaya Bindu of Acharya Vinidhya and Lotsawa. During the earliest period of Buddhism in Tibet, who are collectively known as Kajok Shangsum, made a profound contribution in the dissemination of logical studies by translating many logical texts into Tibetan and establishing the academic centers of logical studies. But due to certain reasons, the academic interest in learning logic became dissipated temporarily, but it was revived again during the later period of Buddhism in Tibet, when great Lotsawa Rinchen Sangpo translated the multitude of Sanskrit Buddhist scriptures into Tibetan. Many of the scholars seem unaware of the logical work authored by the Emperor Tshizong Deuxin, entitled Kayang Tabe Tsemale Dodipa. It's in Tibetan. In Sanskrit, it's called Samyak Vaga Pramana Dhrita Sutra, which is incorporated in Kenjur. This text contains 15 chapters in total. Therefore, it is safe here to conclude that this text is the first indigenous text, Tibetan text on Buddhist logic, that is attributed to King Tshizong Deuxin. And so during that time, there was a monastery which was established by Ngok Lekbeshara, who was the great Tibetan logician. So this topic is dissemination of Buddhist logic in Sangpu Monastery in Western Tibet. So Ngok Lekbeshara, the direct disciple of Atish Dipankar, was the contemporary of Lotsawa Rinchen Sangpo, who established monastic institution in Sangpu in 1073. And since then, the academic pursuit of logical study was once again flourished in Tibet. The student strength was then increased up to more than 1,500 in the monastic institute of Sangpu. According to Kankar Surtim, the nephew, come disciple of Ngok Lekbeshara, was responsible for the dissemination of academic learning of logical texts in Tibet for the first time. He was ordained in Sangpu monastery at the early age, guided by his paternal uncle, Ngok Lekbeshara. He extensively traveled to central India and Kashmir in pursuit of learning Buddhist philosophy and logic and epistemology for 17 long years. At the age of 35, in the year 1092, he returned back to his homeland, Tibet. He then began his translation project of Buddhist Sutra and Tantra, Buddhist logic and epistemology, etc. It is evident from the writing of his direct disciple, Tolungpa, that during his lifetime, he had translated more than 100 slokas. Within the financial support of the Lord Ngachak De for his Sanskrit Tibetan translation project, He translated numerous Buddhist texts, namely Pramana Vartika, Alankara, Pramana Vinishya Tika, and Nyaya Bindu Tika of Acharya Damotra, and so forth. He was very grateful to his.
Excuse me, sir.
Yes, yes.
Sir, sorry, you'll have to conclude, sir.
All right, Lord, all right. Yeah. So, yeah. Anyway, there are lots of things points to remain here. So anyway, yeah. The thing is that, yeah, I'll just wind up in just a few lines. So Buddhism spread to Tibet from 7th century till 13th century. After the collapse of Nalanda, Indian Pandits coming to Tibet was already stopped. So anyway, the last Nalanda abbot was known as Kashmiri Pandit Satya Singha Bhadra. He went to Tibet in the 13th century, and he's the last Indian Pandit who, who propagated Buddhist logic studies in Tibet. That's the 13th century. So anyway, according to our history, we have record that on the tradition of Pramana Vartika studies has an unbroken lineage till now, and which is very much part of monastic curriculum, Tibetan monastic curriculum all over Tibet, Mongolia, Bhutan, and Indian Himalayas. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you, sir, for making us aware in so good manner, so influensive manner. Thank you so much, sir. Now, I welcome our next panelist, Dr. Smita M. Patil. Madam, you are so welcome in our conference on virtual platform. Ma'am is working currently as an associate professor in a School of Gender and Development Studies, IGNOU, New Delhi. She earned her MPhil and PhD from Center for Political Studies from Jawaharlal Nehru University. Ma'am, is there any problem?
No, I
Smita,
think
ma'am?
it's the brief introduction
May I-
that I
Yes,
must
okay.
may
Ma'am
I-
has,
Yeah,
ma'am
that's
has
enough.
much work, epitomic work
May I
on
ask
gender and
may I
studies.
may I ask a question?
Sir,
Hello?
please.
I have a small query. Can I ask a
Ji, sir,
question
please.
to Professor Tenzin? Hello?
Yes, sir.
No, you see, I've been to Ladakh and never been to Tibet.
Yes, sir.
I think the Buddhism which came into Tibet and Ladakh in the 8th centuries, 9th centuries, 7th centuries onwards,
Yes, sir.
I mean, it's quite similar.
Yes, sir.
So sometimes I see that in the literature it's being mentioned as Tantric Buddhism.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Can you just enlighten us about the transformations which Buddhism underwent?
Yes, sir.
When it spread to areas like parts of China and Tibet and Ladakh and so on.
In
Because
fact,
it's a different kind of Buddhism.
yes, sir.
It's
Yes,
not the kind of Buddhism you find in large parts of India in the ancient times.
yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So,
So what are the main differences between Tantric Buddhism and Buddhism as such?
oh, yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So anyway, yeah, thank you so much for your question, sir. See, we call this Tibetan Buddhism or Himalayan Buddhism. This is the Buddhism that spread in Tibet in the early 7th century AD, as I already mentioned in my paper. And during those days, I think the people of Ladakh, actually people of Ladakh or the tribes in and there is Laos Spiti, all we are sharing a same culture.
Manishi, please अपना mic off कीजिए, please.
Yes. So we are sharing a common culture here. So And as I already mentioned, Tibet is direct from India to Tibet via Nepal. And invitation of Indian Pandits.
I cannot hear you, Professor Tenzin. I cannot hear you because there's so much disturbance in the background.
Okay, so I'll repeat again. What I'm trying to say is that Buddhism that spread to Tibet is direct from India via Nepal overland. When Tibetans come to India, they come through Nepal.
Okay.
Then they come down to the central India, and they brought the original Sanskrit manuscript to Tibet, sir. And therefore, as I already mentioned, that this Pandit Rahul Sankrityan went to Tibet in search of original Sanskrit manuscript. That was the reason. So,
I know that Rahul Sankrityan was a great traveler, and he was a polyglot, and he went to Tibet. I know. I've read about Rahul actually. Yes.
Yes, sir. So Tibetan Buddhism comprises of both Sutrayana and Tantrayana, which is we call something Vajrayana.
Okay, Vajrayana. Yes. Okay.
Yes. So throughout these Himalayan regions, the Buddhist Himalayan regions, and in the Nepal also, the some part of Nepal also, where the Tibetan ethnics are living there, their culture, and then in Tibet itself, then in Mongolia, we are sharing a common, Tibetan Buddhist culture, sir. So, there are times when Western explorer in the 18th, 19th century, from Darjeeling, they traveled to Tibet via Sikkim. And in those days, no one could speak English there. So just by observing...
Okay, I asked you a very simple question, sir. I would like to know the difference between Buddhism as we know it in India and this Vajrayana Buddhism and Tantric Buddhism, which is practiced by the lamas and the other Buddhists in Tibet and Ladakh.
Yes. So, sir, ideologically, philosophically,
I would admire a short answer to this question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Actually, what I want to try to explain is that the British explorer, they misinterpret the Tibetan Buddhism as Lamaism in the sense of modified religion, which is in fact not. If somebody stay in the Tibetan monastery for at least 1 or 2 years, then they come to know that we are really practicing Indian Buddhism and nothing else, sir. So, of course, there are cultural influence from ritualistic and this kind of things in the dressing of the lamas, kind of robes. But in fact, the philosophy that we study is based on Sanskrit original text, sir, which is still preserved in Tibet, sir. And we are studying through the Tibetan translation text, sir.
But many of the Buddhist texts are to be found in Pali also.
Oh, absolutely, sir. Yes, sir. Because in
Buddha used to address people in Pali, actually, because Sanskrit was the language of the Brahmins.
So there is Buddhist Sanskrit is a little bit different from Vedic Sanskrit, I think. And also, I think there is a controversy on whether Buddha spoke in Pali or not, whether he speak in vernacular or not. That was again the kind of controversy.
No, but I mean, you see, the assumption is that Sanskrit. You see, the vernaculars you have. How would he talk to people otherwise? Because Sanskrit was a language of the Brahman. Sanskrit was a Vedic language. Sanskrit was a language which was denied to the people in general. That's why Pali and Prakrit developed.
Yes, absolutely, sir.
So I mean, I have no doubt in my mind that Buddha would have used a local language to speak to people.
Yes. So
I mean, that's my interpretation. So.
Yes, sir. In the Tibetan canonical text, we have more than 13 Pali texts.
Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Sir, it's my humble request. I think we should move further.
Yes, please.
Smita ma'am, please, could you start, ma'am, please?
Yeah. Thank you very much, the organizer, and thank you, Professor Anuruddha, being, you are chairing the session. I must also admit that, I did my master's and PhD from JNU, and my main subject is political science. And my PhD work was dealing with sort of interdisciplinary dealing with gender, and of course from the state of Maharashtra. And Buddhism, something which is my again passion, having read, of course, Ambedkar, and also a great influence of my family, particularly my grandmother and the father, who taught me basically the Pali language basics in the childhood, and therefore that I sort of engage with that. So I'm not per se that I would say that a great scholar
Thank you.
sitting here, but what I'm trying to do is that because in a short notice I was told to speak about Buddhist epistemology and feminism. So the title of my paper is Buddhist epistemology and feminism in Buddhism, intersections and departure. I'm sort of, trying to float few ideas here, not per se kind of paper which the other speakers spoke.
Excuse me, ma'am. Dr. Avinash Kumar Jha ji, please अपना mic off कीजिए. Dr. Avinash Kumar Jha ji. Mr. Avinash, please mute your mic.
Should I go ahead? Should I start? Should I start?
Ji ma'am, ji, please.
So the title is Buddhist epistemology and feminism in Buddhism, intersections and departure. So the notion of the geopolitics of ideas has radically altered the traditional understanding of the evolution and the ruptures in the context of the ideas and concepts. It does impact the traditional understanding and foregrounding of certain ideas. It further provoked us to know the relationship of power in the field of the ideas. The question of classification and endless displacement of meaning have also complicated the fundamental questions related to the spaces that are central to the production of the ideas. The question related to the Buddhist epistemology as well as feminism in Buddhism, therefore, have to be explored in the larger background of the departure and consensus in the context of the knowledge production. The nature of the knowledge also varies according to various social, political, and economic contexts. It is therefore important to explore the dialogues and the challenges that straddle across Buddhism and feminism. Buddhism and feminism have its own particular engagements with the epistemology. The question before us is how to probe those varying streams of quest around knowledge. The central concern here are feminism and Buddhism intersect or collide at the level of epistemology or not. Feminism and Buddhism can be analyzed in the backdrop of dominant forms of the feminism. It can epistemically enrich the epistemological Buddhism or not. As discussed earlier, dominant understanding of feminism have undergone drastic change in the time of multiple
Can we have some, please,
feminism.
Smita, just a moment. Can we have some order in this meeting, please? I can't hear you because there are so many people speaking in the background.
मॉडर्न इंडिया का किताब
What on earth is going on?
Sir, we have announced so many times, sir, but
No,
they
no,
are
I don't
not
know. I mean,
paying
I can't
attention.
see. I cannot hear Smita at all because there are people who are speaking in the background so loudly. Can you just ask them to leave the meeting, or can you just eject them from the class?
Sir, I'm trying to
Too
do.
much.
I'm trying.
No, you've been trying to do that for the last 1 hour, but you're unsuccessful completely. Ask Dr. Arya to do it. Have these people removed from the meeting because we can't waste our time just dealing with these people. Please try to understand this is an academic discussion going on. It's not a joke. This is being recorded. This is an international seminar. I mean, I can't hear the speaker.
क्लास अब होगा क्या बात है कौन सा क्लास के बारे में पूछ रही है क्लास नहीं हम एक बार किए थे बस एक ही बार किए हैं आते हैं पर होता है पता ही नहीं चलता कौन मेरा क्लास है कंफर्म सुनो किस ईयर की हो फर्स्ट ईयर हाँ कैसे पता चलेगा कोर्स पूरा हो गया जिस समय सिलेबस कंप्लीट होगा तुम कंप्लीट हो गया तुम तो कहाँ क्लास करोगी जब क्लास होंगे नहीं बोलो 3-4 महीने तुम कहाँ सोएगी जब क्लास मेरा क्या बोलते हैं जुलाई में एडमिशन हुआ था जुलाई में बस क्लास हुआ अगस्त सितंबर अक्टूबर नवंबर हुआ है तो इसी में ना
Arya sir, please do
पता ही
something.
नहीं था कंफर्म है डिपार्टमेंट में पूछी उत्तर
मैम आई हैव
नहीं एक
कॉल
बार आए तो 13 तारीख
आर्य सर को कॉल किया है मैंने
कौन
एंड
तेरा
वो कर रहे हैं मैम अभी
कौन
टेक्निकल टीम से
13 नवंबर को आए थे एग्जाम जब चल रहा होगा उस समय हाँ हाँ तो बोले कि अभी
अंजलि
क्लास नहीं
मैम
होगी 20 तारीख
प्लीज
के बाद हाँ तो 20 तारीख
अंजलि
के बाद
मैम
है ना तो वो क्लास ओवर हो गया है तो अब किताब है आइडिया ऑफ भारत तो क्या करने आती हो आइडिया ऑफ भारत जो है किताब तो
अंजलि प्रसाद मैम
और उसका चार्ट
even she's not hearing ma'am I think she forgot after unmute her mic
जो गया है का नाम है सिलेबस
अंजलि प्रसाद मैम
किताब रखा हुआ है मेरे पास ये वाला नहीं मैम फोन नहीं है अलाउ नहीं है सुनो ना ऐसा ही कवर है लिख लो कवर ऐसे ही नहीं है मैम बुक वो तो देख अच्छा तो इंग्लिश में है
sir I have announced 2 or 3 times her name but she is not paying attention
Organizers can mute all. There is an option called mute all. Please, MC Arya sir and Rekha ma'am, you can mute all and only the speaker will switch on his or her mic and speak.
जी मैम आप स्टार्ट कीजिए मैं इसको चेक कर रहा हूँ
I think that I will start again. I must say that honestly that my background is a political science. I've been trained, and this is how I engage with the Buddhism. Is the influence of course, the Ambedkar's reading, and also my family, my grandmother and my father who taught me the basic Pali language, which I can, today understand, the Pali's context and the suttas and the various, few debates, and of course, the other readings which I have done. So in a very short notice, I was told to, sort of present on Buddhist epistemology, which of course is not my area, but it's an effort which I'm trying to sort of, build up these arguments through that. What are the possible ways which one can look into? So the title which I have given is The Buddhist Epistemology and Feminism in Buddhism, Intersections and Departures. The notion of the geopolitics of ideas has radically altered the traditional understanding of the evolution and ruptures in the context of the ideas and concepts. It thus impacted the traditional understanding and foregroundings of certain ideas. It further provoked us to know the relationship of power in the field of ideas. The question of classification and endless displacement of the meaning have complicated the fundamental questions related to the spaces that are central to the production of the ideas. The questions related to the Buddhist epistemologies as well as the feminism in Buddhism, therefore, have to be explored in the larger background of the departure and consensus in the context of the knowledge production. The nature of knowledge also varies according to various social, political, and economic contexts. It is therefore important to explore the dialogues and the challenges that straddle across Buddhism and feminism. Buddhism and feminism have its own peculiar engagement with the epistemologies. The question before us is how to probe those varying streams of waste around the knowledge. The central concern here are feminism and Buddhism intersect or collide at the level of the epistemology or not. The feminism in Buddhism can be analyzed in the backdrop of the dominant forms of feminism. It can epistemologically enrich the epistemological level in Buddhism or not. As discussed earlier, dominant understanding of the feminist have undergone drastic change in the time of recognition of the multiple feminism. In addition to that conceptual transition, feminism from the margins, such as Afro-American, Dalit, indigenous feminism, in addition to the queer approaches, have raised a deep question to a mere celebration of the diversity of the feminist, plural points of views. It needs to be understood that such insurgent critique have made the question of the epistemic priority and the location of the marginalized gender. Thus, for instance, the sisterly politics have been questioned for its sisterarchy. For instance, if we look at the work of the Oren Yoyemis, she's debating about this whole sisterarchy politics also. So in the other words, those marginalized or sidelined political subjective such Afro-Americans, Dalit, indigenous voices have argued that their social location determined their experiential questions, and therefore they only can understand their voices or their epistemic priority to raise their own voices. Thus, they challenge the attitude of the dominant forms of the feminism. They initiated the critique to the dominant feminist forms of the knowledge production, and they were vital to understand that these current debates can be used as a means to tackle from the initial gender equation related within Buddhism to that of the contemporary deployment of the Buddhist ideas. The key aspect that needs to be mapped is the coexistence of changing gender day-to-day realities and the clash of the ideas around Buddhism and the assertion and space of the woman in Buddhism. The ideological shift across Buddhism and feminism have to be understood as parallel intellectual development. The spiritual and intellectual expeditions of women from various streams in the social and political milieu of Buddhism remain in the midst of the patriarchal driven out of the other organized religion across the globe. The women from the country, South Asian countries or, East Asian countries that have robust Buddhist tradition and the countries that do not have such, visible Buddhist culture have different trajectories of the Buddhist woman. And even in Indian context, when I sort of relate this debate, I could really see the state which I'm coming from, that how there are, this concept of Maitri, which I was raising the question to Professor Aniruddha. I could see that the boundaries and the ways in which it is evolving, the concept of, the Maitri within those, and also to some extent breaking this barrier of the sisterly politics. So then the question is that the women from whether they are able to move out of the patriarchy of the Buddhist and non-Buddhist culture also. For instance, Karma Tasmo have explored the possibilities related to the articulation of the ideas such as Buddhist feminism and feminities. Her perspectives also are skeptical about the mere reproduction of the Western understanding of Buddhism and gender. my ideas are broadly placed with such conceptual tension around the Orientalist and non-Orientalist ideas. At the same time, one has to move away from the stereotypes around such binary construction. What scholars like Karma is doing is to investigate the Buddhist idea around the feminism and its impact on larger sphere of the social justice. At the same time, she notes how the feminist concept may emerge as a contrary to the spirit of the Buddhism. She is suspicious of the feasibility in the adoption of the liberal radical feminist understanding to unveil the big question around the feminist core of the Buddhism. She also mentioned about the ways in which Buddhist society look at the category of the Buddhism. Therefore, one needs to be conscious of such critical reading of the Buddhist society through Western lens of feminism. Another conceptual, framework here is, which is provided in the nature of the Buddhist woman's approach to the theory and practice. However, one has to also look at that. I'm not going to get into this gender and its approaches. On the contrary, it tries to, revisit the select perspectives that tends to have close reading of the gender, feminism, and Buddhism. Scholars are indulging in the phenomenological reading of the Buddhist woman communities, and they are also central to the new forms of hermeneutical understanding of conceptual realm. The question of the gender and feminist assertion thus are filtered through a conceptual nature as well as the Buddhist institutional spaces. It is observed that the fundamental Buddhist debates and the gender codes within the monastic space have its own different trajectory. The dialogue between the respected monks, and for instance, Upali and the Buddha is in recurrent the debates. There is a debate which is going on between the Buddha and the Upali, the gender and the feminism and the Buddhism, which is cited in Karma's book also, in which that, and I quote from that book, that whenever if Bhikshuni changes the sex, what should be done with regard to her? And the Lord replied, Upali, place that one at the same age among the bhikkhus. Moreover, that becomes full ordination and the bhikshu would unquote. There are central debates on the Buddhist action and the consequence. Buddhist ethics and the gender change are analyzed as a big question related to gender fluidity. It analyzed as a subversion of the traditional understanding of the feminine and the masculine. For instance, a study by Kate Kobe on male-female dissection within the Theravada tradition is reviewed as a part of the debates around gender essentializing or gender inclusivity. The question of the rebirth as a way to move away from the Buddhist patriarchal space is contested through the women's monk's aspiration debates around the rebirth. And we have the Therigathas and the Buddhist book is a classic, which I would call it to read. And these debates are available that, how Therigathas have been written by those Buddhist Bhikshuni about their whole momentary process, the liberatory and enlightenment process to Nibbana. At the same time, scholars such as Rita Gross, argue that how the crucial debate on the enlightenment and gender has to be seen. The concept is very much there about the enlightenment, and there is, no differentiation regarding the male and female. But there's also been a study which also shows that there is the whole journey and there's an ambiguous nature and the dynamics nature of the Buddhist understanding of gender, which is woven through these narratives. What are the forms of the knowledge around the gender at the core Buddhist thought? Rigorous interpretation of large pool of the Buddhist texts are suggested to critically reflect on gendered Buddhist aspect. Another main issue here is how the religious engagements across diverse streams of thought are analyzed, remain as a recurrent theme on Buddhist feminist debate. So the obsession with the particular gender identity may lead to what, or is it a form of suffering? This question is complex in nature. Women who transformed into, Arhanta and, the Therigatas told us, informs us those stories are much cited in any gender-related Buddhist spaces. Debates related to the identity and the phenomena in Buddhism are considered as an objective way to untangle the gender knot. So, autonomy of the of woman and the changing nature of the family in the Buddhist society provides changes to theorize the pattern of the patriarchy. For instance, if you look at Tibetan Buddhism, or for instance, if you look at the new Buddhist community from the Maharashtra, have their own political and cultural trajectories and the traditions and the ways they are engaging. And to some extent, that I would argue here is that when I've done a field work of the new Buddhist community, yes, to large extent, that you would see the concept of the Maitri between the husband and wife, and they don't even consider, legally by state, it would be in a public sphere, but the relationship is based on the Maitri, the very democratic atmosphere within own families, which is, are there, and the ways in which they are practicing. So you would see that it's not the patriarchy which the feminists talked about, those hierarchies, in the society, it is there within the family. I noticed that it's less compared to the other, families who are non-Buddhist families, non-neo-Buddhist families. So they are thus renewing and expanding the Buddhist virtue through their gendered and, and the new worlds is there to be explored. So epistemological dimension thus are regarded as a particular for its challenges to the methodologies related to the gender representation, production of knowledge, and so on. So valid sources of the knowledge have to be, there. And in the midst of the unusual division between the superior and inferior identities, gender and its linked social stratification challenges the natural path of the knowledge. Hierarchies thus conditions the knowledge formation. Legacy of the Buddhism may be able to challenge the new forms of patriarchal powers at the same time, because one has to also see that is there any possible way? One hand you would see these kind of things, but there are other possible ways to look at, the patriarchal powers are overpowering or not. So the political and economical condition to determine the nature of the religion and forms of the spirituality. New religious movements that imbibe eclectic dimensions from various religions and spirituality also restructure the gender powers. So feminism and its latest development may be viewed by various Buddhist communities as opposed to their fundamental principle. There may be new interpretation that expand the conceptual ambit of the Buddhism. Lifestyle Buddhism and capitalist patriarchy have been shaping the patriarchy in multiple ways and forms, and circulation of the knowledge across discipline and spiritual forms may emerge within the new academic culture. So such probabilities are essential for conceptual.
Excuse me, ma'am.
At the same time, I'm just
forgive us, ma'am.
At the same
because we
time,
are running short of time, please conclude.
I'm just ending it. It's a lesson. At the same time, it may lead to any meaningful practices or not, has to be investigated in systematic fashion. These are, very scattered thoughts and ideas which I sort of offered in a very short period of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am, for your valuable words, but we are really sorry for the time, because we are running short of time. Thank you, ma'am. Now, I would like to welcome our next panelist, Dr. Meghna Sharma, ma'am. Ma'am, I really welcome you on the virtual platform of second day of international conference. Meghna ma'am has 21 year of experience, research and teaching. And currently, she is working as assistant professor in the Department of History, Maharaja Ganj Singh University, Bikaner, Rajasthan. Ma'am, we welcome you all in the conference. Please, ma'am, are you hearing, ma'am?
Yes,
Meghna
yes,
ma'am?
yes. Thank
Haan ji,
you,
please, ma'am,
Dr.
please.
Sarita ma'am.
Over
And
to you,
I
ma'am.
congratulate again the organizers for this beautiful conference. And first of all, I must admit that I am not from the ancient stream. I'm not from Buddhist studies. This was my I delved into this particular subject because there was a quest in me to know about feminism and feminist approach of different religions of the world, of different thinkers of the world. That has brought me here. So I am thankful to MCRS sir specially and Rekha Oja ma'am to keep me here in this panel. I will just take 10 to 12 minutes, not much more than that. So to begin with, my discussion is on women and their approach of liberation in the Buddhist era with special reference to Pali text Therigatha. Among Indian religions, Buddhism was the earliest religion to witness the evolution of an order of nuns, that is the Bhikshuni Sangha. Bhikshuni Sangha came into existence during the life of Sakya Muni Buddha. It seems to have declined sometime during the early medieval period. These Buddhist nuns, sometimes referred to as Theris, they are called Theris, the Buddhist nuns, and sometimes as Bhikshunis. In the early Pali sources, they left an important historical work, the Theri Gatha. It is the Gatha, the story told by a storytelling system is there. Storytelling by Theris, that is Theri Gatha, which provides information about many women who became nuns. Early Vedic period seems women friendly. But the later Vedic or Brahmanical period, preference of son evolved when people started to believe that liberation is possible only after doing the funeral rites by a son. Women were signified as an asset of men. Manusmriti, authoritative book of the Hindu code, also defines the primary duties of women to procreate children and serve her husband. A code in Manusmriti that women must always be under the control of male members of their family, in childhood under their father, in youth under their husband, and in the old age, if she becomes widowed, under her son. Women in later Vedic period lost the right to choose their husband. Girl-child marriage was in practice. The wide age gap between husband and wife was considered as normal. In those times, in such a social context, the establishment of Bhikshuni order, that is the Sanghas, Bhikshuni Sangha, it was a challenge to the Buddha. Therefore, he might be rejected. Mahaprajapati Gautami's appeal for 3 times to establish Bhikshuni Sangha, Buddha said, "Be aware, Gautami, the going forth of women from home into homelessness in the Dharma and the discipline proclaimed by the Therigatha, Tathagat, is not easy." Even in his rejection, Gautami did not give her hope and she tried until she gets permission. Mahaprajapati and her 500 fellow Shakya women practitioners, they were the first to be ordained as nuns or the Bhikshunis by Buddha Shakyamuni. Mahaprajapati lived more than 25 years ago, and resources that might shed light on her life are rare. Mahaprajapati forsook the comfort of palace life to pursue the path of liberation, knowledge, and inspiring 500 fellow women, can you believe, to follow her. Now, coming on to Therigatha, I will be short. Don't worry, I will not take much time. The ancient Buddhist verse anthology known as the Therigatha, or also Thi, Thi, attracted the attention of some of the earliest Western Pali scholars. Therigatha, the Gathas or verses written by elder nuns or Bhikshunis, happens to be one such body of writing coming from women and refreshingly free of any subaltern tones. Comprising of 73 poems with 522 stanzas, the Therigatha was incorporated within the Khundak Nikaya, which itself forms a part of the Sukt Pitak, one of the three major Pitakas. Originating in the oral tradition, the Gathas have a prolonged history before appearing in a written form as an anthology. It's an anthology and the poetic work, and the collection of that poetic work is Therigatha, where we find women liberation, where we find talks about women enlightenment, knowledge to women, and denouncement of this world. Women, young as well as old, joined the Sangha. These were presented in their familial status as wives and widows, mothers and daughters. Their presentation as wealthy and poor, royal, and even as prostitutes is present in the Therigatha. This text provides interesting information regarding the social status of women who joined the Sangha. So here it is a brief reflective analysis of the anthology, which might serve as a catalyst towards a more thorough going revaluation of Therigatha and its commentary. Actually, those women in ancient India who chose to become bhikshunis faced difficulties unknown to their male counterparts. Their decision to lead a life of celibacy and contemplation completely inverted the gender stereotypes of their cultural milieu. Instead of being content with the life of a married woman, brightened by the birth of sons and overshadowed by the possibilities of a childless widowhood, these women chose to follow the path of religious renunciation. Instead of devoting their lives to the need of others, they concentrated in their own self-fulfillment, though they continue to help each other in the Sangha. Even for an aged bhikshuni, the Sangha was a place of solitude and liberties. In the tradition of Therigatha, the Theris overcome their inconsolable grief occasioned through the loss of children, family members, widowhood, and poverty by seeking refuge in the Sangha. The bhikshunis came from different walks of life, courtesans, young girls from noble families, matrons in advanced age, mothers of children, as well as those who aspire to the fulfillment of their religious aspirations. The model of liberation portrayed in Therigatha is usually one of hardship and struggle. It will particularly demonstrate that these women were self-empowered. They were aware of their circumstances and equipped to deal with the challenges that confronted them. The different ways through which the strength and confidence of the women in directing their lives and initiating change can be envisioned in the Therigatha that will be exemplified through three key themes that are embodied in the poems. I'm not going much in detail because we are running already short of time. So status of women in Buddha's time, there is a small stanza where Buddha says, "O king, there are some women who are better than men, who are wiser and more virtuous, who regard their mothers-in-law as goddesses, and who are pure in word, thought, and deed. They may one day give birth to brave sons who would rule a country. The men of such virtuous wives are worthy masters to teach dharma to the whole country." This we get in Samyukta Nikaya, Volume 1. The Buddha in these teachings respects the natural ability of women of giving birth and master of dharma as well. The society might not accept female as a Buddha. Because of the worthiness of the Buddha is a teacher who guides all sentient beings to release from all types of suffering. Buddha introduced himself as follows: as a lotus, fair and lovely, by the water is not soiled, by the world I am not soiled, therefore Brahmin am I Buddha. This reference we get from Narad Thera. Thera is Theris, the women nuns, and the male nuns are Theras. The Buddha and his teachings, his work is there. Taiwan, the corporate body of the Buddha Educational Foundation. This was published in 1988. Now we have many texts, many stories are there. I'm skipping much part of my, because this is the last presentation and you must be waiting for many must be waiting as I was waiting for my turn. So in the Thai text, just in 2 to 3 minutes, I'm submitting. Chatsumaran Kabir Singh, Bhikkhuni Dhamanan, She grew up in a temple where her mother, Voramai Kabir Singh, had renounced worldly life to become a nun. As a young girl, her Buddhist faith took root as she followed the schedules and activities of the monastery. A feminist Buddhist, she reflects that Buddhism offers a way for self-examination and teaches compassion to deal with her critics, while feminism allows her to merge her personal practice and academic life and be socially engaged. The Malaysian context, women says that women can attain Buddhahood. In her book Cave in the Snow, Bhikshuni Tenzing Palmo powerfully illustrates what a woman can do if she gets her heart and mind to it, living alone for 12 years in the Himalayas in her quest for enlightenment. What matters being a woman? If with mind firmly set, one grows in the knowledge, one of the right law with insight. This is mentioned in Sanyukta Nikaya. So we can conclude, I'm skipping some matter and I come to the conclusion. At last, we can say that we of the 21st century who are seeking to attain liberation will find ourselves deeply grateful to these fully awakened Buddhist nuns of old for their profound assistance in breaking the shackles that bind us from within. Gross sums up the issue in nevertheless the existence of the Therigatha with its sympathetic portraits of women who took Buddhism's message fully to heart and achieved its goal of peace and release stands as a challenge to all Buddhists of all times who would prefer women to do less. Thank you so much for giving me time.
Thank you, ma'am, for your enhancing words. Thank you so much, ma'am. Ma'am, is it really, what should I say? ये जो भिक्षुणी का जो concept है, that is really hilarious for the women because no sect has allowed us to be bhikshuni or like a monk. So it feels immense pleasure. Those who wants to get in this sect कि हमको हमेशा के लिए योग में रहना है या फिर हमें हमेशा from away from the male life means हमें गृहस्थ जीवन नहीं करना है तो is it good for us? I think, but nowadays I'm not seeing anyone who is became bhikshuni. Recently, I didn't get any example or any
No,
name of this.
the bhikshunis were present in the early medieval period, and then this tradition or this, you can say, ordination, it elapsed off. And now, even now, at some places where Buddhist religion is the state religion, we find bhikshunis. Not in India, we don't see Buddhist monks. Yes, we see in Tibet and Leh, and the Dalai Lama is always there. And Himachal, we can see in Uttarakhand, in the pahadon mein, in the mountains. We see mostly there is this religion, but bhikshunis, yes, I have never met. I personally also have never met any bhikshuni. But this was the text which attracted me, that nuns have written for their younger bhikshunis. And even Amrapali, I could not say because we were running short of time. I could not share with you that Amrapali had given maximum financial assistance. She was considered to be a Nagarvadhu, a prostitute. And she had given maximum financial assistance for the spread of Buddhism in those times. So there were like Gargi, Apala, Ghosha, like we have in Vedic religion. There are Mutta, the Ananda, this Amrapali, which is called Ambapali. In the Pali text, she is written as Ambapali, not Amrapali. We call her Amrapali, but it's Ambapali. It's all written there. So this was a tradition in ancient times. That's what I'm saying, that I am not being an expert of Buddhist. I tried to delve into this subject and will present much more when I will present this in my paper. When I will give my paper to you.
I'm just sharing my views only na. Actually, ये topic हमेशा attract करता है मुझे कि how become, like yogini.
It is very interesting. Yes, it is very interesting. That's why I studied this. I studied many articles. And I was quite adamant to present on this particular topic only.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Yes. I think Tripti ma'am is there. Tripti ma'am.
Yes. Yes. Good afternoon to all of you.
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am. I request to you to chair the session, please.
in this session.
जी ma'am, जी, please.
Okay.
जी.
Just Rekha ma'am has not informed me. Okay, by the way, I will be prepared myself. First of all, I just want to ask some questions to the Meghna ma'am, who might be some questions related with the Therigathas, because I have done a project under UGC, and one of the scholars have also submitted MPhil on this particular topic, Therigathas and the status of women in Buddhism and Jainism. So this is a very relevant topic, and for this connection with reference to her topic, I just wanted to say something that I had met with some of the bhikkhunis in the Sarnath, and some bhikkhunis are at Calcutta also. In the Fogwang temple that we met them. That Fogwang University is at Taiwan. Fogwang University as Taiwan, but their branches are at Calcutta and other places. And I met some of the Theris at Fogwang temples, and they are very simple oriented minded, and they live a life like other monks, and they have to maintain some of the rules that
Yes.
which are very strict.
And they have to be under the bhikshu ordination, ma'am. What I
Yes.
came to know, that they have to be subordinate to the bhikshu order. This was said before also, and now I don't know what is the present situation. You must be knowing more, as the students are doing PhD and MPhil under you.
Yes, for
Sorry for
the
interrupting.
project's purpose, I had met with them, and some queries I also asked to them, that they had given me lots of informations regarding their livelihood and their relations with the other monks and other
Monks,
things.
yes.
So,
Yes, ma'am, it was there in my presentation, but due to we are running short of time and we are too late already. That's why I could not. There are 8 particular rules. There are 8 rules, strict rules. They have to strictly
and
stick to
before
those
that,
8 rules.
beside
Yes.
that, they have another 356 rules also. They are also following those rules.
Okay, that's a new knowledge for me, ma'am.
Yes, and some of the things is that they when they go to the other places that like in China and other places, they also have to accept more rules, because they are giving some rules that in their countries, which is not related with India. So very interesting their lives, and they also follows the basic rules is that if they are following the Mohajani rules, they have several rules they are following like China's and other places. But when they are following the Tibetan rules, that if they are Therigathas and following the basic rules of Buddhism, then they are not the Mohajani Theris. They are only following the Theravadi rules. So the basic difference they have. So thank you very much for presenting your paper.
Thank you so much, ma'am. Thank you.
And thank you.
Thank you for the
from my
review,
side
ma'am.
also.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Hey, ma'am, shall I call the name of the presenter?
Okay, thank you for if you call their name, because I have no list of them.
That is why I'm saying I'm just sharing with you, ma'am, with a couple of minutes. First one, please, Ravi Shankar Prasad and Deepika Mishra, ma'am.
जी सरिता मैम
जी सर
अविनाश सर आगे हैं
अविनाश सर आगे हैं अच्छा सर थैंक यू सो मच
सर को इंट्रोड्यूस करा दीजिए और सर आज के चेयर
गुड आफ्टरनून टू ऑल ऑफ यू मैं काफी देर से सेशन ज्वाइन कर रहा था और मैंने कल का भी सेशन अटेंड किया था सो
रवि सर एक एक्सक्यूज मी रवि सर एक मिनट रवि सर
यस सर प्लीज
सर एमसी आर्य बोल रहा हूँ
यस सर प्लीज
अच्छा सरिता मैम अविनाश सर है वहाँ पे तो सर को चेयर करा
जी सर
सर को इंट्रोड्यूस करा
Am I audible?
हाँ जी sir, you are audible sir. Sir,
actually
we have great pleasure that you have joined here sir.
मैं कल भी सेशन अटेंड कर रहा था. The session was very interesting yesterday also, and today also Deshpande sir ko maine suna, and then I would like to thank Jha sir also for today's session. I would like to thank Arya sir because of him I'm here to present my paper. Actually, I do not belong to actually history or Buddhist society. I'm basically I belong to engineering background, and while talking to Arya sir, I came to know that there is a big requirement where Buddhism should interfere engineering field. So actually, my concept was Buddhist philosophy
Sir, if you allow us, we won't give a short introduction of yours.
Yeah, you are asking me?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay. I'm
Sir is
Dr. Ravi
जी.
जब हम बने रहेंगे तभी तो हम बोलेंगे.
इरा सिंह मैम प्लीज अपना माइक ऑफ कीजिए प्लीज.
Sorry.
इरा सिंह मैम प्लीज माइक ऑफ कर दीजिए अपना.
Shall I start?
हाँ जी sir. Sir is presently posted at as Associate Professor, University Department of History, PPU, Patna. Sir has done a bulk of work, means an epitomic
Actually, I'm
work
Ravi
in
Shankar Prasad. You are talking about
area.
me?
Ji? Yes, sir. We are taking your permission to introduce you, sir.
No, actually, I will introduce myself if you permit me.
Okay, sir. Sir,
Yeah,
sure,
thank you.
sir. Thank you so much, sir,
Actually,
for your kind gesture.
yeah, I'm Dr. Ravi Shankar Prasad. I am a professor and dean at Amrapali University. Few minutes back, Madam Meghna ma'am was talking about Amrapali, so it was a great information. So I belongs to Amrapali University, Haldwani. I am professor and dean here of Engineering Institute, Faculty of Technology and Computer Application. I'm working in the field of engineering since 25 years. So I have seen a lot of transformation of engineering area in the engineering area. So I had some input when I met Dr. Arya, and we talked about the Buddhist philosophy, international conference on Buddhist philosophy. So I just thought I will give my input. There has to be some philosophy that should contribute to engineering domain also, so that it can be controlled. We can have good control over the domain, means thoughtfulness. Because Buddhist philosophy has interference in almost all area of our society over a period of more than 2600 years. So I wished AI should not be an exception, because AI also has a great influence in our day-to-day life, and every person is being influenced through internet services or many smart devices. So it has become integral part of our society, we can say. So I thought, if within philosophy, I remember Ashoka. Ashoka also get converted, and he followed the Buddhism philosophy. And if I can just imagine, or if I think, if Ashoka would have met Buddhist earlier, he could have not done that massacre, the thing which he has done. So Kalinga, while winning Kalinga, but after the completion of the war, he realized, when he came in contact with Buddhism, Buddhist philosophers, he realized that what the mistake he did. So same thing, I also wish, because now machine has very great interference in our day-to-day life. So I wish Buddhist philosophy should be integrated and should be made basis to govern the decision taken by machine so that it will be in the benefit of our society and humankind. So I would like to start with this. I'm here to present a paper that is a review paper on harmonizing ethics and innovations, integrating Buddhist philosophy into the development of artificial intelligence. This paper examines the convergence of Buddhist philosophy and artificial intelligence, highlighting how mindfulness, ethics, and compassion can inform AI development. By addressing challenges like algorithmic bias, and ethical dilemmas, this interdisciplinary approach envisions AI systems fostering inclusivity, equity, and harmony, offering a path towards a more balanced human-machine coexistence. AI application almost governs agricultural field, educational field, e-commerce, entertainment, robotics, automotive, social media, data security, finance, gaming, astronomy, healthcare, transportation, and many more. The challenges of AI is they have to take automated decisions where we don't have proper basis to control their decision. And that's why I think Buddhist philosophy can work there. There are many more like lethal autonomous weapons. They also should be influenced by Buddhist philosophy. Then we have unemployment due to automation. So automation should be governed because of Buddhist philosophy, through Buddhist philosophy. Artificial general intelligence. So this also should have interference of some philosophy, preferably Buddhist. So autonomous things also, as well as self-driving cars. Cars also is an example where we can implement, because sometimes if we have self-driven cars, so what happens if some object come in between? So the AI in the car has to take a decision whether to drive through that object or not. If it is suppose there is a small animal, so AI may not be able to take decision if they are not influenced by a good philosophy. The objective of the work was to investigate intersection